Job chapter 27, verse 13. Job 27:13. This is the portion of a wrong man with ale, and the inheritance of cruel ones, which they receive from the Almighty. If his children are increased, it is for the sword or the famine, and his offspring shall not have enough to eat. Those who remain of him are buried in death, and their widows do not weep. Though he heaps up silver like dust and lays up garments like clay, he lays up, but the righteous puts it on, and the innocent divides the silver. He built his house like a moth, like a booth which a watchman made. He lies down, a rich man, but he is not gathered. When he opens his eyes, it is no more. Alarms overtake him like a flood. A storm wind shall steal him away in the night. The east wind takes him away, and he is gone, for it sweeps him from his place. And it hurls itself against him and does not spare. He swiftly flees from its power. It claps his hands at him like you're like trying to shoo something out, like to shoo a bat out of the attic, you know. It claps all these things, claps his hands at him and hisses or whistles him out of his place. So as you read this, you realize that there's no benefit in being immoral. You make that decision. I'm not going to be an immoral person. I'm going to have an anchor. I'm going to have the scriptures as my anchor. So then Job continues here with verse 1 of chapter 28. Then he says, indeed, Ken says, so with this in mind, therefore, there is a mine of silver. Now, we live in the Black Hills, right? I mean, we're going to be really accustomed to these next few verses, all right? They're familiar to us. There is a mine for silver and a place where gold is refined. Now, it's interesting in this verse that there are 3 or 4 different words that are translated gold. We have gold, the word for the color of gold, the sparkling color of gold. We have gold because it is mined deep in the ground. We have gold because it is precious or refined. We have gold because it's carved out of stone. And so there is gold that's like the gold of Ophir, where they just carved it right out of the rock. So we know that we pan for gold, we sluice for gold and so forth, or we can actually see there. A friend of mine was working in Homestake years ago, and when they would blow the lead and they'd move in and begin to haul ore out, he said a lot of times they would be in there where they could just see rows and rows of gold in the rock. I mean, you just see the yellow was right there and just incredible, just beautiful, like you're walking in some rich man's palace. We know we can understand that. So when we come to these words gold, we're going to be still thinking about gold. And gold is, of course, a precious metal, and it lasts forever. It doesn't rust out or anything like that. You know, it is like lead, where it's soft if it's 100% gold, but other than that, we see gold. In verse 2, iron is taken from the earth. Now we go back to Genesis chapter 2, and we see that that Moses talks about the gold that was in the rivers in the places there at the beginning of creation. Havilah, there was gold there in Havilah. We go to Genesis chapter 4, and we find that children of Lamech, who was a grandson of Cain, was an artificer in copper and in iron. And so even pre-Diluvian era, we find that they knew how to mine the iron and the elements of the ground. And so we see that this is something that man has taken on himself to do. Noah had to have nails, to nail the ark together and things like that. So anyway, we can assume a lot of things. He had to have rods to keep the tigers, in a cage or whatever. So A lot of times we think before Noah that everybody lived in caves and dragged their women around by their hair. But that wasn't the case. They didn't live in caves. Okay, so iron is taken from the earth. We know that. Copper is smelted from ore. So we heat up the ore, the rock, the stone. The word stone here is a building stone. So a block, a rock, a large stone, which is the ore, and copper is smelted from the ore. An end to darkness he has set. So he goes to the extreme of darkness. So the extreme of where he was inhabiting. And so he makes that place he's set up there in darkness. To every limit he is searching. He goes as far as he can go to the rocks in deepest darkness. And it's talking about mankind here. Now what we see, the description given to us, is the difference between man and beast. We don't see animals doing these things. Animals are not, basically your animal instincts is that you have things that you do, you eat, which means that you're going to be hunting or gathering. You eat, you drink water. If there's hunting, of course, there's a need for protection because there might be a predator out there that's wanting to hunt you. And so you have to keep your guards up. But as far as that goes, so there's the eating that you need. There's the protection. So whether you live in a tree or a cave or under a rock or a hole or whatever, wherever animals live, or sometimes you just have extra hide on you and just graze out in the pasture. But whatever it is, there's that protection. So you eat, you find protection, you reproduce so that life keeps going on, and then you just take things as they come. All right, basically, man is different. Man is different, and that's why it's impossible for us to see that where the connection, where we've just evolved into a higher form of animal. There's something extra, and we'll see here how that God has given us those things that are extra, that those gifts come from us. What gave us the motivation to dig into the ground to find gold, or to find ore, or to find oil, or whatever it may be. And so he's talking about this. Man goes to great extents to find these things that are useful to us. In verse 4, he opens a shaft far away from people. So he travels great distances. And of course, Job is down in the southern part of the Levant, and down where the diamond mines are and the gold mines. A lot of Solomon's mines were down there toward the sea in the southern part of the Middle East. And so he says he opens a shaft far away from people. They are forgotten by feet. Okay, so there are no paths that lead right up to the gold mines or to the diamond mines or whatever it may be. They hang far away from men. So here we see that he's describing people digging a shaft and digging into the ground, and then having some sort of apparatus, maybe some sort of harness, where they hang in the shaft and doing their work. You're not going to find other animals doing this. A monkey may hang from a tree by its tail, but it's not going to weave a rope together and say, okay, guys, let's go out and hang around. They're not going to do that. There's a total difference between the animal kingdom and humanity. And so with that comes the message, we should be different. We should quit acting like animals. We should quit thinking that all I need to do is sleep and reproduce. We should rise above that, and we should live within the presence of God. And that's what he's teaching us here, all right? So he opens up the shaft far away from people, that forgotten by the feet. They hang far away from men. They swing to and fro. And so we see that wherever they need to go, they're going to get there. Verse 5, earth or land, out of which food grows, is turned underneath as by fire, or changed. The word turned means to change. So the ground underneath is changed as by fire. So we see as we take the ore out of the ground that we use fire. Maybe they had when they discovered explosives. You know, the first guy to discover explosives. I think his nickname was One Arm or something like that. I can't remember what it was, but anyway, again, they use whatever means possible. Actually, the first way of digging through the rock, except by using the hard flint, as we'll see here, was with water and steam. And so they would have the water and they would heat the water up, and the steam then, the force of the steam would bust the rocks up, and that's how they would dig their shafts and how they could go down into the ground. And so they discovered the power of steam, and so they changed the ground underneath the mountains. In verse 6, its stones are the place of sapphires, and sapphires, all of these are going to be gems. We see several different gems mentioned in this chapter. Sapphires comes from the Hebrew word sapphire, and so the sapphires were in the stones. They're jewels, gems. Sapphires are about as hard as diamonds are. I don't know what use they have, except that they're very beautiful, and you have large or small sapphires. We did that when did we do it? Passover? When was it? A year ago? I can't remember. Anyway, Shavuot. They did it during Sukkot last year, but we did it. Oh, we did it again in Shavuot. In May. So there are sapphire mines in Montana. We got dirt from that and went through the dirt and found sapphires, little tiny ones, but there are, of course, bigger ones. We have onyx and beryl and a lot of different gems, emeralds, diamonds, of course, crystals. So we see a lot of those mentioned here. So they found the stones at the place of sapphires, and they found as it has dust, and it has dust of gold. Dust of gold. So they must have been in the Black Hills during the time of General Custer, because that's the message that Custer sent to Washington, was that all you have to do in the Black Hills is just kick the dirt and there's going to be gold. And so, he was a great marketer. He got a lot of people to come out to the Black Hills, and because of that propaganda. But anyway, maybe he was reading the book of Job. Nobody, can't fault him for that, right? But it has dust of gold. In verse 7, no bird of prey knows the path. Okay, so we know that ravens or ravenous birds that hunt and prey on other animals, we see that there's that instinct within them. As a raven or the falcon or whatever would be preying on another animal to kill another animal, that instinct is given to them. And what Job is saying here is there is no instinct in the animals to go into the ground or to do whatever necessary in order to get gold and gems, silver, iron, those types of things. There's nothing in the animal instinct to do that, okay? Then he goes on and he says, nor has the hawk's eye or the vulture's eye seen it. So the vulture, the eagle will prey and kill an animal, but it also will eat, scavenge. It also scavenge like vultures and eat dead animals as well. So we see it, nor has it in a hawk's eye seen it. So here, we think of the eagle, we think of the hawk, we think of their advanced optical nerves, but no matter how strong their eyes are, they do not see these things that Job has mentioned that man sees. Okay? In verse 8, the proud beasts have not trodden it. They've not walked that path, nor has the fierce lion passed over. The proud beast, that's speaking of the young cubs of the pride. You know how youngsters are. Okay, so the proud beasts have not trodden it. They have not walked that path, nor has the fierce lion passed over it. He, man, puts his hand on the flint. He shall overturn the mountains at the roots. The flint being a very hard rock, so he'll find a flint and use the hard rock. And again, overturn, the same word here is, or change the mountains at the roots. He cuts out channels. The word here could be streams or shafts. So like a mining shaft. He cuts out channels in the rocks. And his eye sees every precious gem or everything that's precious that he can gather up from those rocks. And of course, the gems, the jewels are used for trade and for bartering and for exchange. And so the more jewels, the more of these items that people regarded as with value or high value, it was a benefit. Instead of taking a wagon of hay into town, you could take a pocket full of jewels, and it was much more beneficial. So he learns to cut the channels in the rocks, to use the streams, to use the water, to cut through the rocks. His eyes see every precious jewel. He dams up the source. He stops the sources or the streams of the rivers. You know, that's an incredible thing right there. I was down in a Homestake mine. I was down 7,500 feet. And when water would come out of the side of the lead is the tunnel going into the mountain. The shaft is a vertical tunnel. And so, but the water would steam would the water was probably 110 degrees or more coming out of the side of the rock. And it's just amazing. One of the things, the difficulty of the mine was the water. And we would have gone down to 8,000. We were supposed to go down to 8,000, but it was underwater. And I'm very happy that they didn't drop the cage down to 8,000. I was very glad for that. They stopped at 7,500. But water was always, in Homestake mine, water was always an issue. And once they shut the pumps off, now the mine is filled up so much with water that it would just basically be impossible. Maybe they've worked on it, but the last I heard, they would never be able to get all the water out of the mine because the water goes in and as they into the ground, and as they would suck it out of one place, it's just going to flow and just keep coming and keep coming and keep coming. So, when the pumps went out, that was a very disastrous thing. But man has the ability to dam up the sources of the rivers, brings to light what is hidden, or light. We could say light exposes what has been hidden. And then there's a pei after that. Okay, pei is a letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And that typically marks the end of a chapter. And so we see here all along, Job has been giving his discourse, and now he stops with that because he's actually bragging on man. He's actually showing us how different man is from the wild beast, how different man is from anything else that is living. We are a special creation. God has made us special. And we're not just animals evolved from apes or other animals. As I look across, other animals come to mind. But we're a special creation. We're a special creation. God made man in his image. And what a blessing that is. So we were created in the image of God. And so Job says, why are you living in your immorality? Why are you living like animals when you have the potential to, if you have the potential to mine the gold out of rocks to fill the earth with gold, you've got more potential than just getting up in the morning and going to bed at night. And I hope that you realize that. Wisdom, so then he starts this question. He says, and wisdom, verse 12, and wisdom, where is it found? Where is the place? Where is the standing of understanding? Two different words here. Kokma is wisdom, and bain is understanding. And as we look at this, when we think of understanding, that's intellect, things that are intellectual. Okay, understanding, learning things, the things that we learn, information that we are able to keep in our minds, and that's understanding, the intellect. Wisdom is taking it a step beyond that, a higher step. Wisdom has the idea of skillfulness, the idea of using the intellectual in a practical way, to be productive with what you know. And so the focus then turns to this element that we call wisdom, skill, being able to do things with the knowledge that we have, being productive with the knowledge that we have. It's more. So he's given us a challenge. He's saying it's more than just knowing the facts. It's more than just having a bunch of stuff floating around in that gray or pink matter. I don't know what color it is. But anyway, it's more than having the encyclopedia memorized. What do you do with that information? We need to be productive. He wants us to be productive. God gives us the tools to advance. Wisdom, the idea of wisdom means to advance. And so to take a step higher, to do more, to get more wisdom, to get more understanding, to learn more things that we've never done before. What's great about getting old is that we can learn to do things that we can't remember ever doing before. Well, that's exciting. That's exciting. So wisdom, where is it found? Where do you go to get wisdom? Okay, so then Job talks about that. Where is it found? Where do we go? What store can you go to where you can get wisdom? So in that verse 13 then, man, with all of this inventiveness of man, all of the things that man has been able to do, man does not know its value. The word value has the idea of a pile or stacks, like things that are of more value, the stack is higher. Less value, the stack is lower. Man doesn't know how big the stack is for wisdom. We have to be taught that. That's not going to just come by instinct. We have to teach our children how important wisdom is, how high the stack is for wisdom, the benefit, how far you can go with the more wisdom that you have. It's not enough to know how to get on Wikipedia. You have to know what to do with that knowledge to be productive. And so he says, man doesn't know its value. Guys, God says, I've given you so much. You don't understand the value that I've given to you, of the things that I've given to you. And it is not found in the land of the living. Okay, so we don't see it again, we don't see it in the flowers and the trees. We don't see it in the monkeys and the cattle. It's not found instinctively. The deep has said, it's not in me. The deep, the depth, the abyss has said, it's not in me. The sea has said, now we've discovered a lot of things going into the ocean. The sea has said, It's not in me. Verse 15, gold is not given for it, nor silver weighed out as its price. So all the digging for gold, all the digging for silver. There was a time, there's a scripture verse that I can't put my finger on it in my mind right now, but it talked about, and I think it was during Solomon's time, but it mentioned how much gold Solomon had collected, that when they would get shipments of silver that would come in and they would throw it on the ground. What do we need silver for? Look at all the gold that we have. Wouldn't that be something? The gold is not, the silver is not weighed or balanced. The word weighed here means to balance it in a balance, in a measuring. You can't weigh out its price, its exchange. It is not valued in the gold or the pure gold of Ophir. Ophir was a community, an area where it was known for the gold mines and the refined gold. In precious Shoham, say Shoham. Shoham, there you have a Hebrew, now you know Hebrew. Shoham. It's translated a beryl, it's translated onyx, or a gem. So we've tried to put some sort of English word to it, but it means just something precious, jewel, something of great price, shoham, or sapphire, sapphire. So it's not valued. It doesn't matter. All of these things that you've been mining, all these things that you've been collecting, all of your garments, your houses, all of those things that were mentioned in the previous chapter, you can't trade any of it for wisdom. Gold or crystal. The idea of crystal is a translucency of it. Some translators have it as glass, but I don't know in Job's time that they actually made glass. There are crystals found that are like quartz crystals and so forth. But the idea of transparency, gold or crystal are not to be compared with it. You can't even put it in the same value. Nor is it exchanged for a vessel of fine gold, refined gold, pure gold. So there you have it. No mention, verse 18, no mention is made of coral or crystal, or some translators have pearl down here for crystal, but the idea coral and pearls all came from the sea. Coral is not a mineral. I mean, it's a life form, made from a life form, but coral was used in exchange as merchandise, and so he mentions that. Coral or crystal, for the price of wisdom is above rubies, jewels. It's above anything that we would look at as having great price. The price of wisdom is above rubies. Solomon said that in the book of Proverbs. Wisdom is above rubies. The topaz of Cush. Cush could either be north of Mesopotamia, the northern part of Mesopotamia, or it also could be down in Libya, in what we know as Africa today. But the topaz, some of these jewels that are mentioned, Moses actually, he had the writings of Job and the teachings of Job. Job is foundational to everything in the scriptures. And so Moses collected the different sayings and writings and things that had been preserved that Job had taught. And so when we get to Exodus, I think around 25, something like that, when the shield that the priests wore that had the 12 gems that identified the 12 tribes of Israel, that some of these gems were mentioned in that breastplate. The topaz being one of those. The topaz of Cush is not to be compared with it, or valued in clean gold. And then he says again, okay, then it's a pet. Okay, so then it starts all over again. And wisdom, now there's a little bit of difference here, but he says, wisdom, where does it come from? So first of all, in verse 12, he said, where do you find it? And then he says, wisdom, chokmash, where does it come from? Where does it come from? Where is the place, the standing of understanding? It has been hidden from the eyes of all living and concealed from the birds of the heavens. Destruction, Abaddon. Abaddon, we see that word in the Greek, in the book of Revelation, speaking of destruction. It comes from the word Ava, which H6 in the Strong's Concordance. But we see that quite a bit in the book of Job, which means to perish, something destroyed. Destruction and death have said, with our ears, we have heard a report of it. Now, that's an interesting statement that Job makes, because a lot of times we say, well, when I die, I'm going to find out everything. Well, not necessarily. What gives you that idea? Where did that come from? I'll know everything once I die. A lot of people say, well, I don't know if I'm going to go to heaven or not. I guess when I die, I'll find out. How do you know? I think I would get my ticket bought now. I think I would accept his redemption today instead of waiting to see, because destruction and death have said, with our ears, we have heard a report of it, but we can't really say for sure. We don't know. We could go to hell. We could go to Sheol and ask them down there, and they would say, if I would have known where wisdom came from, maybe I wouldn't be here. Verse 23, Elohim has understood its way. And there's the answer. Where does it come from? The Almighty God, El Shaddai, Elohim. Exactly. Elohim has understood, knows, Mavin, has understood its way, its path, its derek, its path, its way, and he has known its standing, its place. He knows where it's at. He knows what it is. He understands it. All right, then we see an example. For he, speaking of God, for he, Elohim, looks to the ends of the earth. So Elohim is all-knowing, and he looks throughout all the land. He observes everything. He looks to the end of the earth. He sees, or he gazes under all the heavens. The idea of this word is that, like, if you see something very beautiful and you have to take a second look at it. Stop, let's take a look at that. Look at, oh, this is incredible. Pull over. That kind of a thing. It also has the idea of a bird of prey that is gazing like fire, gazing, burning gaze of the sun. The idea of the suntan, getting a suntan from the rays of the sun, that burning gaze of the sun. So not only does God see everything, he knows everything that's going on, everything that there is. He looks to the ends of the earth, but he gazes, he sees under all the heavens. Then verse 25, he makes a weight for the wind. The word wind here is rock. So we could say wind, we could say spirit, we could say life, whatever it may be. But literally it's wind. He makes a weight for the wind. Now, a couple of things come on here. First of all, he measures the wind to see how fast it's going, how far it moves something. Can you imagine God did? Okay, anybody got a piece of paper? Oh, okay. Let's put this up. Let's see how far this paper is going to bend in the wind. We're going to measure the wind, and see what it takes. How it's going to. But I don't know that Job knew anything about barometric pressure, that there was weight. Maybe that was something God was giving him. One day we would actually discover it. We had this craving to take a strand of hair from a horse's tail and connect it to a needle that was pivoting on a board and see if it could move the needle, or I don't know, barometric pressure. But anyway, as you think of these things, where did that come from? Where did we get the idea that we could take a square inch and go a mile high and measure that weight and put a number to it? Isn't that incredible? Making a weight for the wind. Maybe our scientists actually read some of Job and had that idea and said, oh, maybe we can do that. Measuring out the water, the volume, the waters by measure. Figuring out the volume. What is a cubic foot of a gallon or whatever it may be, deciding, being able to measure out water, to weigh water. Working in the oil field and working with saltwater disposals, I found out a lot about hydraulics and learned a lot about the weight of water, how salt water weighs so much more. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it's incredible, the difference in freshwater and saltwater, how much it weighs. When we went to the Dead Sea, and we could just get about knee deep or middle of our thighs and just sit down in the water and float. And no matter what shape you were in, you just floated around the water. And, because the salt water was so much heavier, it's so much denser than you are, that you would just float on top like oil on top of water. Making a weight for the wind, measuring out the waters by measure. So we see here that God not only looks at the ends of the earth, not only gazes upon it intently, but then he begins to test it, examine it, measure it, weigh it. When he made a law, or this is not a Torah, but when he made an examination for the rain, so he made a law for the rain and a way for the lightning. The word law here is from the word appointment. So he made an appointment for the rain and a way for the lightning of thunder, or literally the calling of the lightning. So when the lightning flashes, it gives out a calling that you hear after the lightning. So he made an appointment, he made a decree for the rain and a way, a path that you tread on, a path for the lightning of thunder, for the calling of the lightning. Then he saw wisdom. All right, so here we have it. He's giving it to us. Okay? You have your intellect, you have the things that you know, the information that you can gather. And so here's wisdom. Where is it going to be found? Where does it come from? comes from God. It's found as you apply these principles that God applies. If you follow God, you're going to have wisdom. If you follow God, you're going to take what you know to the next level. You are going to be productive. You're going to do things that are righteous, not immoral. You are going, because just by definition, immorality leads to destruction. And you don't want that. You don't want destruction. You want life. Choose life, Moses said. And so he makes a law for the rain. Then he saw wisdom. All right? So this is our challenge. He saw wisdom. He made a law for the rain. That's very important. He made a law for the rain, and he saw wisdom. He saw it. Look. Open your eyes. And, if we don't have eyes, use other senses. Gather information. Gather all the information. Look, study, receive the information. So he saw wisdom, and then he declared it. The idea here is to ascribe, to write it down, to enumerate it. So he saw it, and then he wrote it down. We learned this in school. You remember, or were you sick that day too? But we see something, and then we have a hypothesis. I think that this is what is happening. So we write down what we see. We write down the information that we're able to gather through our senses. We write it down. We enumerate it. We inscribe it. He saw wisdom, and he put it down. Then he prepared it. He established it. He set it up. He erected it. He built it. So after we experience our senses and get that information, then we write down our hypothesis, what we're thinking. A lot of times we stop right there. But what God did, he took it a step further, and he built up a model. And he built up a model in order to establish whether the hypothesis was true or not. God has put so much confidence in you. Isn't that incredible? He built man as a model. He made man in his image. He saw what wisdom looked like, and he created man. Because man could take it a step further. It's not just what's intuitive. It's not just what is in our DNA. But we can accumulate the facts, the information, and we can take it to the next level. We have the ability to do that. He saw wisdom. He wrote it down. He enumerated it. He prepared it, he erected it, and also searched it out. So then we find that he penetrated it, he examined it. And that's what God does with us. He gets inside of us, and he's examining us all the time. Now, he's not condemning us, he's examining us. And if he's examining us, then he can make improvements. Isn't that incredible? Throw retirement out the window, folks. It's time to be productive again. Through the power of God, we can do it. We can do it. We don't just slide into some utopia or something. God has a purpose for us. No matter what our physical condition is, he has faith in us, and he is penetrating us, and he is examining us, and he wants to make us as great as we can be, as we desire, as really as what we put effort. It's like the motivational speaker that I heard one time. He says, all you can do is all you can do, and all you can do is enough. All you can do is all you can do, and all you can do is enough. We don't beat ourselves up because we can't do what somebody else can do, but we can do everything God wants us to do. Or we can find somebody who can. Then he saw wisdom. So here he puts it into practicality, all right? Just what we have in the verses ahead of it. He saw wisdom. He's going to search it out. He looks to the ends of the earth. He saw wisdom. He declares it. All right? So he sees it under the heavens. He declared it. He prepared it. He erected it. He put it up. And also searched it out, examined it. And then he said to man, look, see. The fear of Yahweh, that is wisdom. So after God examined humanity, I mean, how is God how is the Creator Almighty God going to know wisdom if it wasn't for man? He's already at the top. How do you get wiser than God? How could God even have a definition for wisdom if it wasn't for man? That's why he didn't create us perfect, complete. But he completes us. Now this is the Sabbath. Don't have a runaway, okay? We still have a day of rest. So, wait till tomorrow and then put this to work, all right? He searched it out and he said, see the fear of Yahweh. Now the Tetragrammaton, which we have in our scriptures, in our translation here, is not actually in the book of Job. The Hebrew word that they're translating is the word Adonai. And the word Adonai comes from the word Adon, which means ruler, authority. Adonai is a name. Adonai is a name of God only used in the Hebrew to address God, Adonai. And so the translators believed that there was no way to translate this into English without using the Tetragrammaton Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh to express who it is in this magnificent teaching. The word fear comes from the word rain in the ancient Hebrew, something being thrown. It uses the two letters, the Yod being, and the idea is the hand throwing, okay? The rain being thrown down, a stone being thrown by the hand. And you think, how in the world is that defined? How did fear come from that? But the idea of fear is that all around us, there is a potential danger. Whether it rains down, can rain down hail, whether something could be thrown. The idea also is it's so the spelling is Yod Resh, and so the idea is the throwing the head, okay? But it's also the idea of shooting an arrow or teaching, like instruction, like pointing a finger, saying you're going to do this. It's very complicated as we read through this. Okay, well, how does that bring fear? But you kind of begin to understand what fear is. Fear is knowing that there is the unknown, knowing that there is the potential of something harmful coming to us that we have no control over. That's on one side. Okay, the rain being thrown down or objects coming through the wind. The other side is the idea of teaching, instructing. And so we have the idea of fear. And that's why he said in verse 26, he said, when he made a law for the rain, he was making a decree for the fear. And he said then, see, look, the fear of Yahweh, that is wisdom. And we see this several times in the book of Proverbs and other places. The fear of Yahweh is the beginning of wisdom, the beginning of understanding. There needs to be a fear, knowing that there are things that are out of our control, knowing that there are things that we cannot defend ourselves from. But knowing also that God is not just a treacherous God, but he is a God that desires to teach us and to train us. And he's saying to us, don't be afraid of this life. Don't be afraid of moving up, because I've got your back. Let me teach you. Let me be your authority. Let me be your ruler. Let me direct your thoughts. Yod, Resh, hand, head. Let me put my hand on your head. God says. God wants to put his hand on your head. And you might be able to go down a shaft and change the base of a mountain. If you can do that, what do you think God can do with you? He says this, and to turn from evil, to turn off evil is understanding. Go back to Job chapter 1 and verse 1. Job was a man who feared God and who escaped or turned off evil. If you went from Job 1:1 to Job 28:28, what an incredible teaching we have in this chapter. I want to encourage you, whatever gifts God gives you, whatever he can do, he wants to do great things in each one of our lives. Doesn't matter how old we are or how young we are. You know, when God called me to do what I do, I know he has been working on my life. I don't remember when I was 10 years old. When I was 10 years old, that was before I knew how to type. They did have typewriters then, but it was before the computer, the personal computer, but they did have typewriters. But it was before I knew how to type. When I was 10 or 11, 10 years old, my heart was so burdened about my neighborhood, and the kids in my neighborhood that I actually wrote out a gospel tract. I took scripture and wrote out the scripture, and I wrote out a gospel tract and passed it out to all my friends. It was just in my heart to do something, to try to make the world a better place. When I was 22 years old, I was senior pastor of New Testament Baptist Church in Columbus, Wisconsin. Started that church and pastored for 7 years there. When I was a senior in high school, we went to a Christian school. When I was a senior in high school, I went to the people in charge. We had chapel once a week. And I said, I would like to have a senior chapel. I would like to have once a month that the senior class would put on a chapel. They said, that sounds great. Being the president of the senior class, I was able to preach to my fellow students, hundreds, when I was 16 years old. When I was 13 years old, if anybody knows anything about downtown Denver, I stand on a street corner of Larimer and 16th and preach. I'm not bragging on myself, but I just wanted to say yes to God. After I was ordained, I crammed, to tell you a little bit about how smart I am. I crammed 4 years of college. I got a Bachelor of Arts. I crammed 4 years of college into 10. But I am going to say that in that 10 years, I started a family and started a church at the same time. But when I was ordained into the ministry in Denver, Colorado. 50-some pastors from the Denver area were there at my ordination. They grilled me for 3.5 hours. My pastors told me that he had never been to an ordination where the candidate had quoted so much scripture. I wish I had all those verses still. They're someplace. But it's just God. It's all God. It's all God. I got a call from my high school back in the 80s. We were pastoring here in Sturgis. Got a call from the principal of our high school in Denver, in Lakewood, inviting me to come and speak at graduation. And so I was able to speak to over 1,000 people at my alma mater. Then I went home and mowed the lawn. It's nothing of me. I'm just the janitor. Take a look at the names, the guest book of the Garden of Scriptures, and you'll find people from Brazil, from Chihuahua, from Ireland that have been here this week, the past weeks. See, it doesn't take rocket science. God can do it with any of us. And so I just want to encourage you. And I just say these personal notes just to let you know that I'm nothing special. I just happen to have opportunities. And God gave me opportunities to do things. And maybe these things don't mean anything to you, but I'm just sharing these things with you. But you see, this is wisdom, the fear of Yahweh. Fear Yahweh. Let him be your ultimate authority, the ultimate authority in your life. Don't worry about the rain. Don't worry about the wind. Don't worry about the stuff of this life. Bad things can happen. But let God, let the Almighty El Shaddai become the ultimate authority in your life. Not yourself, but God. And then turn off all evil in your life. Just keep turning it off. You see something that's not constructive, turn it off. And you start turning off the things that are destructive in your life, and God will be able to use you in whatever might be. Whether it's, seeing somebody out on the highway that broke down, or giving a sack of food to somebody, buying a tent for somebody, whatever it may be. It's not going to go down in the history books, but it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to.